Hey everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. Today we are doing the 20 questions book tag. I was tagged by Kirsten from Kirsten's Corner. I will have her channel linked below. Thanks Kirsten for tagging me. As the title entails, this is just 20 bookish questions about myself. And so let's get into these questions. Question 1 is, how many books is too many for a series? And my heart lies within dense, epic fantasy series. So I don't really want to put a limit on this. My dad right now is reading the Wheel of Times series, which is like 13 or 14 books by Robert Jordan and then Brandon Sanderson towards the end. And he's really enjoying them and he has them, so I will probably end up reading them eventually. So I'm not going to put a number on a series. Also, I'm one of those people, when a big series is over and you have invested so much of your time and emotional energy into it, you feel like empty and lost. Hence why I am still 200 pages into Kingdom of Ash and Throne of Glass. I'm gonna finish it soon, I promise. I just get super attached to characters and stories and I just get invested. So I'm not gonna put a limit on how many books is too many. Especially if the author is good, then I will read however many books are in a series. And like even more on that, like romance series where like each of them could be like a standalone, I will eat that up. If I like the author, like I said, I will consume their literature. Question 2 is, how do you feel about cliffhangers? I can appreciate a good cliffhanger, especially in a series, and especially if that series is completed or at least the next book is already out. I don't have a problem with a cliffhanger. I mean, honestly, even at the end of like a standalone book, I can get behind a cliffhanger if it lets me kind of like make my own assumptions for how the story is going to wrap up. I don't have any problems with that. Question 3 is hardcover or paperback? And that's a hard one because aesthetically, I like a hardback. Especially you have the dust jacket, which is pretty, and then you take the dust jacket off. And sometimes the naked hardcover is like pretty and decorated. I can eat that up, but they are heavy and they are heavy to hold. I have the hardcover of Night Film, and when I was reading it, my like wrists were getting tired because it was so heavy. So visually, I like a hardcover, but physically, I would prefer to read a paperback. Number 4 is such a hard question. It is, what is your favorite book? And that's so difficult because I read a lot of different books. And it's hard to compare, like some genres is like comparing apples to oranges. I would probably say enjoyment and investment wise, my favorite book slash series is Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. Should I grab these books? Maybe. I'm gonna hold up Rhythm of War. It's the 4th and the latest released book in the Stormlight series. I loved this. I love the characters. I love the storytelling. I love learning about the history of the world where we are. I just like feel like that is me. This is me. I love this series and I love his Mistborn series as well. But if we're talking about favorite indie romances, which is another big genre of mine, I really love Bunk 57 by Penelope Douglas. This is a bully romance. This is a high school romance. Things that like I would not think I would like, but I do. I love this. I ate this up. I read this last summer in like 2 days. I don't know. I can't help it. This is just like literature for me. But if we're talking about my favorite book that I read last year, then that was Be Not Far From Me by Mindy McGinnis. This is a YA contemporary of a girl trying to survive in the Smoky Mountains after she gets injured. So like my taste like just ranges a lot, and I don't know, I just feel like I can appreciate a good book if it's good. That's like so vague. Also, I really like Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. If we're talking about thrillers, I can't like narrow it down to one book or series. But if we're talking about like authors, my favorite author is probably Brandon Sanderson. Question 5 is, what is your least favorite book? I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I'm just like easy on books, if I'm just easily entertained. I'm definitely easily entertained, but I don't give very many below 3-star ratings. I actually think I've only given 1 2-star rating before, and this is probably an indie romance too, and I just read this free with Amazon Prime last year, but it's called Heartbreak Warfare, and it's by Kate Stewart, who I really love. I love her Underdog series, The Guy on the Right, The Guy on the Left, The Guy in the Middle, and like Flock by her. I really like those, but this one, and this was had a co-author too, it was Heather like Orgeron or something. This is like a military cheating PTSD romance, and It was so not for me, but the characters are so well written and so well developed, and the angst was there, but it was just so, the trope was not for me. The plot was not for me. She has like a child in here, and like, I just didn't like it. Wasn't a fan. This is my least favorite book that I've ever read, but I just haven't read a lot of bad books. Question 6 is love triangles. Yes or no? I don't really like a love triangle. To me, they're kind of exhausting, and I can kind of lose interest in them, and a lot of the times you can kind of see who's going to come out ahead anyway. And I just prefer when I feel like our couple is meant to be together, like cosmically meant to be together. There's no one else for them, like Fae mating. I just prefer that. I prefer like explosive dedication to each other over a wishy-washy love triangle. Question 7 is most recent DNF, and I just do not usually DNF books. Also, I'm like pretty early in my reading career, so I feel like I'm backlist reading a lot. I'm just reading books that are just generally good, or I'm reading for book clubs or things like that, things where I finish the books. And also, I pick up a lot of books and pause on them, but that's not me DNFing them. That's just me having to pick up other things, me kind of losing interest just for a little bit, but I don't plan on never finishing them. But the most recent book that I like took off my currently reading on Goodreads it's called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, and it's by a monk. I'm not sure what his name is. You can see it when I insert it over here. I actually got like a pretty good ways into this. I got like 60% into this. I was reading it as like a free ebook, but I felt like I got what I was going to get out of this. It talks about dying and like the process of death and like the spiritual process of death, and like I felt like I got the modern aspects out of it, and then it was getting like a little too much for me, and then I just like wasn't interested in reading it anymore. But that was the most recent book. I know that's like super obscure, I guess, but that was the most recent book that I like unclicked on my currently reading shelf on Goodreads. Question 8 is your current read. I'm currently reading so many books, like probably I'm in the middle of like 8 books on my Goodreads shelf. Like I mentioned before, I'm 200 pages into Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas, which is the 7th and final book in her Throne of Glass series. It's a young adult fantasy series with adventure and fae and witches and wyverns and magic and travel and war and demons. There's just a lot going on in this series, and it wraps up with this book, and I just paused on it because I just had a lot of other like smaller books I want to read. It's like 900 pages, and I just don't want it to be over also, if I'm being honest. I think that's the only book I'll talk about as a current read right now, just to try to be concise in my reading habits that are not concise at all. Number 9 is a book you recommended recently. I told Nick he should read A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. I just started the audio of this, and I was like, dang, my husband would love this book on like physics and science and biology. So I recommended that to him like yesterday. But in my office at work, I recommend so many books. Everyone in my office has read The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This lovely copy of The Simple Wild has been passed around so many times now, and that makes me so happy. This is an adult romance where we follow our main character. Her name is Calla. She's like a rich girl in Canada, and then she goes to visit her dad, who was just diagnosed with an illness, and he lives in very rural Alaska, and he owns a bush pilot plane company, and then she has a romance with one of his grumpy pilots named Jonah. I'm sure I can find a video where I talk more about this and link it below. And also, I actually just did a collab with Kirsten from Kirsten's Corner, who tagged me in this video, where I recommended her 3 new adult romances and she recommended me 3 young adult romances. I will link those videos below. But I recommended to her Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas because this is another book that I recommend to everyone in my life. So another book that is slowly making its rounds in my office. And I also recommended to Kirsten Heartbones by Colleen Hoover, which was one of my favorite books I read last year in 2020, and The Guy on the Right by Kate Stewart, which I've already mentioned in this video. So I feel like those are some good like recommendation books that I generally give to people. Question 10 is the oldest book you've read. And if we're talking like me and my personal life, like not required for like school or anything, probably Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I'll be really embarrassed if I got that wrong. I really enjoyed that as a classic. I think it was written in the 1840s, like 1847. So like in my recent life, that's the oldest book that I've read. But like I read Shakespeare and stuff in high school. But that wasn't really like chosen by me personally. So we'll go with Jane Eyre. The newest book you've read, probably Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This came out in March. I think it was March 9th. And this is the concluding book in her Brown Sisters trilogy. I have recently done a video on this whole trilogy and I will link it below, but it's an adult romance series and it's really, really good. I gave this one 5 stars, a great wrap up. This is probably the newest book I've read, but I have several new books, especially romances, on my TBR coming up very soon. Question 12 is your favorite author, and I already mentioned this. It's probably Brandon Sanderson. He can just write these worlds and I just want to know everything about them. I want to know everything about the characters in them, and it's just great epic fantasy that I can immerse myself in, and I will happily read thousands of pages of his books. But also, like, I really like Penelope Douglas, and I don't give a lot of her books. I think I've only given one of her books like 5 stars. No, I've given 2 of her books 5 stars, but I want to read all of them. I just like feel understood by them. It's indie romance and it's usually like kind of dark and I enjoy that. And I'll also mention Colleen Hoover because her books are kind of the same way. They always have super messy relationships in them and I eat it up, like can't put them down. Also though, Tessa Bailey, I've only read like 3 of her books so far. She's another adult romance writer, but oh my gosh, her books are like the perfect combination between traditionally published romance and indie romance. They have kind of like the kind of lighter traditional feel to them, but like the steam and the smut in them is like indie level, like perfection. So those are just some authors that I like right now in my life. Question 13 is buying or borrowing books. If you have like looked at my channel, you see that I do huge book hauls. I can't stop buying books. It's a problem. I like to buy things, and right now like books are just my jam. I actually need to film a haul like right after I film this video. I love to buy books, but I did recently get a library card and I've really enjoyed borrowing ebooks because I just really like to read ebooks. They're so consumable. I can just like flip through them on my phone. I can read them so fast. So I have liked borrowing ebooks from the library, but I'm going to be honest, if I borrow a book from a person, I feel super guilty about it because I don't read it quickly. I have some books on my shelf from my friend Hannah from work and one of my professors from my grad program, and I'm going to read them. I'm going to read these books, but I just let so many other books get in the way. So then I start to feel guilty because I just like hoard these people's books, and I know like they're not reading them at the time, but it like causes me like a little bit of low level anxiety. But yes, buying books forever. I definitely already have a pretty good start on a home library. This isn't even all of my bookshelves. I have another bookshelf over there that you all like never see, but it's like all of my fantasy. Question 14 is a book you don't like but everyone loves. I mentioned this already. I don't know if I have low standards or I'm just easily entertained. It's probably both, but I just like don't dislike a lot of books. Like I can appreciate a book for what it does. I'll just mention Serpent and Dove and Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. Okay, Serpent and Dove was like good. It was like okay, good. I like didn't mind it. The writing is a little, not really the writing, but the characters are just a little grating and annoying and immature, especially like in a fantasy world that you're just like modern immaturity. I don't know. I really didn't like Blood and Honey though, the second book in the series. I don't know if I'll read the last one. If I do, I'll probably just like borrow it from the library or something. Question 15 is bookmarks or dog ears. Listen, if I can buy something bookish, then I will. These bookmarks are from Christine here. She's with the Roomies Digest, but she has an Etsy shop. I'll link it below. It's the Sebi shop. She makes super cute watercolor bookmarks, and I just like love bookmarks. Like listen, especially, let me show you. I have like all these like botanical type bookmarks, and like I'm all about the plants and picking bookmarks to like match the cover of my book. I'm all about it. Like I said, if I can buy something, this is a mess. But also dog earing books and folding pages hurts my soul. Question 16 is a book you can always reread. I don't reread a lot of books, namely because I have so many books I want to read. And okay, listen, I'm gonna be real with you, and this might be a little bit embarrassing, but one of the only books slash series that I have reread in my life was 50 Shades of Grey. Because, listen, so I read 50 Shades of Grey when I was like a senior in high school, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are books that are steamy. And I didn't know that that was a thing. And this was like right when 50 Shades of Grey was like super big and everyone's aunts and uncles were reading them. And then it was like a random summer, I was home from college and I was like, hey, those books were pretty hot. I'm gonna read them again. And so I read them again. I didn't know. I was young and dumb and I didn't know all of the like great indie historical traditional romances that were out there, so like don't hold it against me. Also, like, I enjoyed those books, like they were fun. I wasn't like psychoanalyzing everyone like I should have been, but and then the only other book that I really reread is Odd Thomas by Dean Koontz, which I would call this one of my favorite books. I talked about it like early on in my channel. This is like a book that my dad read and was like, hey Britton, you should read this book. And I was like, okay Dad, thanks. And this is like a suspense paranormal series. It's really good. I should finish the series. I don't know if I have. It's like 8 books. But I read this when I was probably 15 or 16, and then I was home for a summer from college and was just like picking books out of my room and read it again. And it's really good. I don't even own this book. I should own this book. I should buy this book. Question 17 is, can you listen to music while you read? Yes, I 100% love to listen to music while I read. I feel like I'm a very musical person. I can't really play any instruments. So like not that kind of musical, but I love music. For like ambience, I like just like a lo-fi playlist on YouTube, but alternative rock is just like my heart and soul right now. There are like 5 people that I cannot stop listening to. They are Barnes Courtney, Des Rocks, AWOL Nation, The Unlikely Candidates, and The Glorious Sons. Oh my gosh, I just live for these men. Question 18 is one view or a multiple POV. I am here for the multiple POV in all of my books. My fantasy, my romance, my thrillers, I love it. I want everyone's perspective. There is nothing better than a romance where you have the 2 love interest perspectives and you can see their internal like angst and their monologues in their head and just how they feel about the relationship. I love it. I live for that. Bonus points if they're written in first person. Give me all the books like that. Question 19 is books in one sitting or multiple sittings. There are not many books that I read in one sitting. I read consistently, but not really like for super long periods of time, but I can read all throughout the day, but I probably never read for more than like 30 minutes at a time. So my reading comes from chronic reading and not acute reading. I'm a chronic reader, not an acute reader. And question 20, the last question is, who do you tag? First of all, I don't like to feel limited. So if you're watching this video, I tag you. Don't feel like you need to be named. Do this video if you want to do this video. But if you want to get called out, I'm going to tag Manda from Ginger Snapped Reads, Caroline from Caroline Johnson, and Beth from The Bookworm Trait. I will have all their channels linked below. Guys, if you don't want to do this video, don't do this video. I'm just giving you an in if you are interested. Also, if you've already done this video, then I apologize. But thank you all so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up. Like I said, film it if you want to film it. And thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you in my next one.